My sister screamed. She stole my necklace. My $8 necklace is gone and she's the only one who was in my room. Dad didn't even hesitate. He didn't ask questions. He didn't look at me. He just turned to me with that cold glare that could silence an entire house and growled. Get out. You're not welcome here anymore. No trial. No explanation. No chance to speak. Just like that, I was a criminal in my own home. Before I tell you how I ended up building a life they never believed I could, or how my father would one day eat his words, you need to understand who I was before that moment. I was the daughter who always paid the bills behind the scenes. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 27 years old, and I live, or used to live, in Tampa, Florida. To my father, Richard Carter, I was the family embarrassment. I worked as a waitress. To him, that meant I had failed at life. Never mind that I helped pay the electric bill when my sister forgot. Or that I covered the car insurance when Dad's account overdrafted. That wasn't worth anything compared to my brother's shiny law degree or my sister's marketing job downtown. My dad was a man who valued appearances above all else. To him, a suit and a title were proof of worth. Scrubbing ketchup off booths and smiling at customers? Worthless. He used to say, I didn't raise you to wipe tables, Emily. But he never asked why I stayed at the diner. The truth is, I wasn't just waiting tables. I was learning, watching, managing, studying every part of how that place ran, from the supply chain to the menu board. Every night, after my shift, I'd come home and write down notes. Recipes, layout ideas, costs, customer favorites. It looked like a worn-down journal. But it was my future business plan. I didn't tell anyone because, what was the point? In my family, unless it came with a title and a business card, it wasn't real. Still, I kept going. Quietly. I wasn't looking for applause. I was building something for myself, piece by piece. Then came the necklace. It was a Thursday, hot and humid. I came home from work to shower before dinner. My sister Brooke was already there, lounging on the couch, her heels kicked off, wine glass in hand. We didn't talk much. She always made me feel like I had dirt under my nails. Dinner was tense. Dad lecturing as usual about responsibility. Brooke scrolling through her phone. I kept my mouth shut. The next morning, all hell broke loose. Brooke's scream jolted the house awake. Her bedroom door was open. Jewelry case tipped over. And the necklace, an $8 sapphire piece she got from some ex, was gone. I didn't even get a chance to defend myself. She pointed at me like it was obvious. You were the only one home after dinner. You probably needed money, didn't you? Tips weren't good enough this week? I was stunned. I laughed at first, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. Dad didn't even ask what I had to say. He didn't want the truth. He wanted an easy answer. He wanted someone to blame so he didn't have to face the cracks in his perfect little house. And I was the crack. He didn't yell. He didn't explode. He just stared me down and said those words I'll never forget. You're no longer part of this family. That night, I packed my things. Nobody helped. Brooke stood in the hallway, arms crossed, like a queen watching a thief get dragged away. I walked out the front door with a single duffel bag. But what they didn't know was, I stopped paying their utility bills the minute I left. Because yes, it was me who had been covering the electric, the internet, the water, for over a year. All from my tips. All without thanks. All because I thought we were a family. But families don't throw you out like trash without asking questions. And this time, I wasn't coming back. I didn't cry that night. Maybe I should have. Maybe some part of me wanted to. But I think I was too numb to feel anything. Or maybe I'd run out of tears years ago. I drove across town to the only place I felt safe, a small, creaky apartment above the diner where I worked. The owner, Linda, had offered it to me months ago in passing. If you ever need a place, I've got a room upstairs. It ain't fancy, but it's quiet. It was quiet, and clean, and mine. I slept on a mattress on the floor that first night, fully clothed, my duffel bag still zipped. No one called, no one texted. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the old fridge below. The house I'd lived in my whole life, that place with the neat lawn and the white shutters, had become just another building in my past. And so had my family. The next morning, I made coffee at the diner before sunrise. Same as always. The regulars came in around 7, Charlie with his newspaper, Mrs. Gutierrez with her decaf and banana muffin. None of them knew what happened. I didn't tell them. But Linda noticed. "You all right?" she asked, wiping down the counter beside me. I nodded. She didn't press, just gave my shoulder a light squeeze and said, "You know, the kitchen's hiring a night manager. You'd be good at it." I looked at her, half laughing. "Me? Manage? You've been managing this place quietly for 2 years and I've just let you pretend you haven't." "I think it's time." That's when it began. That quiet little shift. The one no one saw coming. I said yes. Not because I wanted a title. But because I needed something to believe in again. Even if it was just a dusty kitchen with a leaky faucet and a menu board that hadn't been updated since 1998. So I took the night manager role. Stayed late. Balanced spreadsheets. Ordered supplies. Adjusted pricing. Linda gave me free rein. And I didn't stop there. Every dollar I saved went into a separate account. I called it Plan B, even though it was really Plan A all along. I tightened my budget. No takeout. No new clothes. Just work, sleep, save, repeat. Meanwhile, back at home, if you can still call it that, things weren't going so smoothly. By week 2, the electricity got cut. I heard about it through my cousin, who texted, "Did y'all forget to pay the bill? Uncle Richard losing it. Blames the company." I didn't respond. Then came the water. Then the internet. Apparently, Brooke had no idea I'd been paying everything. She thought Dad was. Dad thought Brooke was. Turns out, no one had paid anything in weeks, because I had always been the one making sure the lights stayed on. Quietly, silently, without asking for credit. I guess it never occurred to them how things actually got done. They assumed everything would just work. That's how it always was with them. Taking. Assuming. Demanding. I had never made a scene. So they thought I had nothing to give. But they were wrong. By month 3, I had enough in my savings to get serious. I applied for a small business grant through a women-owned entrepreneurship program Linda told me about. She even helped me write the application. Said she'd co-sign if needed. I poured my heart into that proposal. The business name. The concept. The recipes. The customer experience. Everything. My concept? A family-style comfort food restaurant with rotating seasonal menus and a tribute section for old diner classics. I called it Second Helpings. Because everyone deserves one. I didn't tell anyone, not my sister. Not my dad. Not even my cousin. I wasn't interested in their validation anymore. But I'll admit, I was scared. Scared it wouldn't work. Scared they were right. Scared I really was just a girl who wiped tables. But I kept going. Because something inside me had finally come alive, and I couldn't bury it again. Then one afternoon, in the middle of folding napkins for the dinner shift, I got the call. I got the grant. I got the grant. I remember standing there, holding the phone to my ear with one hand and a bundle of white cloth napkins in the other. My knees nearly gave out. The woman on the line was cheerful. Professional. She said things like, "Congratulations," and "Next steps." But I barely heard her. All I could think was, I did it. Me. Emily Carter. The waitress. The disgrace. I hung up and just stood there in the kitchen. Silent. While the dishwashers laughed about something in the back. I looked at the wall clock. The same one that had ticked away hundreds of my hours. Dreaming of this very moment. My palms were sweaty. My stomach a knot. But something had shifted. It was mine now. My turn. Linda came in and saw my face. She didn't need to ask. "You got it?" she said. I nodded. She pulled me into a hug. Then stepped back and smiled. "Time to start packing up. Kid, you've got a restaurant to open." The next few weeks moved fast. I barely slept. Every minute was filled with phone calls. Meetings. Inspections. I scouted locations obsessively until I found it. A small vacant building just 5 minutes from the old diner. It needed work, bad plumbing, peeling paint, but it had good bones. And the rent was manageable. The best part? It used to be an office suite. One my father had looked at years ago for expanding his accounting firm, before he said it was too much of a risk. I didn't plan it that way. But when I signed the lease, and saw his name still on one of the old mailboxes from an inquiry he never followed up on, I'll admit, I felt something deep, not revenge, just justice. And a little sadness too. I rolled up my sleeves. I painted the walls myself, stripped the floors, scrubbed the windows. Linda loaned me some kitchen equipment. A couple of my coworkers volunteered to help on weekends. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't sleek, but it was mine. I remember one night in particular. I was on the floor of the dining room, cross-legged, sorting through old silverware we got at auction. My back was aching, and I had a blister on my thumb from twisting a rusted bolt loose. But I looked up at the big front window, still dusty, and pictured it with the sign I had sketched months ago. Second helpings, a place to start again. I cried then, not from exhaustion, but from the sudden realization that I hadn't thought about my father in days. He hadn't called, not once. Neither had Brooke, or my brother. I was officially forgotten. Or maybe they still thought I'd slink back one day and beg forgiveness for something I didn't do. That necklace? I don't even know if they found it. Or if Brooke ever realized she probably misplaced it in her drunken haze. At that point, it didn't matter. What mattered was that I had finally stopped trying to prove myself to people who only wanted me quiet and small. I opened the restaurant 3 months later. No ribbon cutting, no press, just a little Facebook post from Linda, and a handwritten chalkboard sign on the sidewalk. On opening day, a line wrapped around the block. Locals came, diner regulars came, even the old city councilman who once yelled at me for forgetting his side of ranch. They all came. I ran the kitchen with my sleeves rolled up and my hair pulled back in a bandana. Grease on my cheek, butter on my apron, and a permanent ache in my feet that I welcomed like an old friend. We sold out before 3 p.m. I walked outside afterward, sat on the curb, and let the sun hit my face. The door behind me swung open. "Emily," said a voice I hadn't heard in months. I turned, and there he was. There he was. Dad stood in the doorway, wearing the same gray slacks he always wore to the office, only now they looked looser around the waist. His button-down shirt was wrinkled at the collar. And his face, it was thinner somehow. Weathered, like something had been quietly gnawing at him for months. I didn't move, I just looked up at him from the curb. Waiting. He glanced around, taking in the warm wood siding, the painted window trim, the customers still lingering at the patio tables, the chalkboard menu with "second helpings" written in soft cursive. His eyes flicked to me, then away. I wasn't sure if I should come. He said. I didn't answer. He took a slow step forward. "Your cousin told me you opened a restaurant. I thought it was a joke." Still, I said nothing. He rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding eye contact. "I didn't come to fight." "Then why are you here?" I asked, quiet but steady. He shifted his weight, like the ground under him wasn't cooperating. "I don't know," he said. "I guess I just wanted to see it. What you built." There was no apology. Not yet. Just curiosity wrapped in pride he couldn't quite swallow. I stood up and brushed the dust from my jeans. "It's not much," I said, "but it's mine." He looked at me then. Really looked. For the first time in what felt like years. How did you afford all this?" I folded my arms. "You'd be surprised what you can build when no one's helping you and everyone's doubting you." The words hung there, heavy, true. He didn't flinch, but he didn't argue either. I took a breath. "I covered your bills, you know, for over a year. Internet, water, electric, all of it, out of my tips." He blinked. "I didn't know." "Exactly," I said. "You never asked. You just assumed." We stood in silence. The sounds of clinking dishes and laughter drifted out from inside. Finally, he stepped aside. "May I come in?" I hesitated. Then I nodded once and led him through the front doors. He walked slowly, like he was afraid to break something. I watched him scan the space, the open kitchen, the wall lined with old family photos, the cozy booths tucked into corners. His gaze lingered on a framed picture of me and Mom, taken when I was 10. She was holding a pie. I was holding the spatula. I remember that day. He murmured. She burned the first crust. I said nothing. We reached the counter. A tray of fresh biscuits rested on a rack nearby. He looked down at them. Then at me. Do you ever miss home? He asked quietly. I tilted my head. I don't think I ever lived in a home. Just a house. He flinched at that. Just a little. But I saw it. He sat on a stool. For a long time. He said nothing. Just stared at his hands. Then finally, in a voice so low I barely heard it, I'm sorry. Emily. There it was. 3 words I'd been waiting my entire life to hear. But oddly, they didn't hit the way I thought they would. Because I didn't need them anymore. Not like I used to. Still, I nodded. Thank you. He glanced up, eyes glassy. Your sister found the necklace. It was in the lining of her suitcase. She never told me. I found it myself while packing. I felt something shift in my chest, not pain. Exactly, more like release. She always was careless. I said softly. He smiled a little. Takes after her father. I let out a quiet laugh. The first one we'd shared in years. You did good, Emily, he said. Better than I ever expected. I know, I replied. We sat there for a while. Father and daughter. Not quite friends. Not quite family, but something new. Something raw and honest. Then he stood. I should go, he said. Don't want to take up more of your time. Would you like to take some biscuits with you? I asked. He smiled. Just a little. Only if they're the kind your mother used to make. They are, I said. She taught me well. I packed him a small bag and handed it over. He took it like it was fragile. Sacred. At the door, he turned once more. You really don't need anything from us? No, I said. I never did. I just wanted to be seen. He nodded slowly. And then he walked out. After he left, I stood there for a long time, watching the door sway gently in the afternoon breeze. The scent of warm biscuits still lingered in the air, mingling with the quiet hum of conversation from the dining room. For the first time in my life, I felt no urge to chase after my father. I didn't want anything more from him. Not his approval, not his blessing, not even his forgiveness. What I wanted, what I had always wanted, was already in my hands. The restaurant became my sanctuary. Not just for me, but for people like me. People who had been underestimated, overlooked, written off. I hired staff from the diner who'd once been laughed at for their accents or their age. I brought in line cooks with tattoos up their arms and hearts bigger than any resume could measure. People who worked hard and stayed late. Not for recognition, but because they believed in something. And every time a customer said, "This reminds me of my mother's kitchen," or, "I haven't tasted a pot roast like this in 30 years," I felt something knit itself back together inside me. Second helpings wasn't just food. It was healing. Quiet healing. Served warm. But healing never comes without a few scars. Brooke showed up about 2 months after Dad's visit. I saw her through the front window, standing at the curb in heels far too high for the cracked pavement. Her sunglasses were oversized. Her purse cost more than my rent. I almost didn't go out. But something told me this conversation was overdue. I met her on the sidewalk. "Hey," she said, like we'd seen each other just last week. "Hey," I replied. She looked around awkwardly, then crossed her arms. "This place is nice. I didn't know you could do all this." I nodded. A lot of people didn't. She gave a tight smile. Then sighed. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I said nothing. I was angry that night. Tired. Drunk. Honestly, I couldn't find the necklace. And it was easier to blame someone. Easier to blame me. I said. The one person who never asked for anything. Her eyes flicked away. "I didn't know you were paying the bills." "Of course not," I said. "You never asked." Silence stretched between us. Finally, she reached into her purse and pulled out a velvet box, the necklace. She opened it slowly. "I wanted to return this. Or at least show you. I found it months ago. Inside the lining of my suitcase." I was too embarrassed to say anything. I stared at it, that glittering, ridiculous thing that caused so much damage. I didn't want it. I didn't want anything from that night back. "Keep it," I said. "It's never been mine." She looked stunned. You sure? I nodded. She hesitated, then added, Dad's different now, ever since the business went under. He's quieter, softer, still proud, but I think he's trying. That's good, I said, not unkindly. She shifted, uncomfortable. So, do you want to come by sometime? For dinner? I thought about that. About the house I grew up in. About the cold dinners and colder words. The silent expectations. The harsh comparisons. The hollow kind of love that came with strings attached. I'm not ready, I said honestly. She nodded, as if she already knew. Then she turned and walked away. I stood there a minute longer, watching her disappear around the corner. The necklace still glinting in her hand like a lie finally let go. I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumph. Just peace. And that was enough. Business kept growing. Word spread faster than I could keep up with. At first it was just locals, retired couples, tired mothers, construction workers, teachers. Then it was food bloggers. Then a small segment on local TV. By the 6-month mark, we were turning away tables every weekend. I had to hire more help, expand the kitchen, even start training a second manager for evenings. But I still worked the floor, still bussed tables, still wiped down counters at closing. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to remember what it felt like to earn every inch of this. One evening, just after closing, I sat on the front patio with a cup of decaf and a slice of blackberry pie. The kind Mom used to make when life felt too heavy. I watched the sun sink behind the strip mall across the street, casting everything in gold. That's when I saw him again. Dad, alone. No suit this time, just jeans and a light jacket. He walked up slowly, holding a manila envelope under one arm. His shoulders looked smaller than I remembered. He didn't ask to come in. Just sat across from me at the little iron table. I got a job, he said without preamble. Part-time bookkeeping at a nonprofit. I smiled. Good. He looked around. You redid the patio. Looks nice. Thanks. A beat passed. He tapped the envelope lightly. I wanted to bring you this. I took it and opened the flap. Inside was a document, typed, notarized, and signed. A transfer of ownership of the house. I'm giving it to you, he said, not because I think you want it, but because it's the only thing I have left to give that might mean something. I didn't know what to say. He cleared his throat. It's yours. To sell. To rent. To do whatever you want with. I already moved into an apartment near the beach. Smaller. Simpler. I looked at him then. And saw the man beneath the armor. The man who had lost everything except the child he once threw away. And maybe that's why he came. Not for forgiveness. But to leave me with a different ending. Thank you, I said softly. That means more than you know. He nodded, his eyes glassy. I was wrong, Emily. About so many things. About you. I let that settle between us. Maybe you weren't entirely wrong, I said, just looking at the wrong things. We sat quietly for a long while, the sky deepening to violet above us. Then he stood, gently rested his hand on my shoulder, and walked back down the street. He never asked for anything. Not redemption. Not repair. Just left me with the deed to a house I no longer called home. I didn't sell it right away. I let it sit, empty. Sometimes I drove by, parked across the street, and just looked at it, the front door that slammed behind me. The windows that never lit up with welcome. The ghost of the life I tried to fit into. Eventually, I did sell it. Used the money to open a second location, smaller. More casual. I called it Emily's Table. A place where no one was ever unwelcome. Where no one had to explain who they were. Or why they'd come alone. People came. Because good food draws people in. But good stories, quiet victories, keep them coming back. And somewhere in all of that, I forgave them. Not because they asked. But because I didn't need their guilt to carry me anymore. I forgave them quietly. Not in some dramatic, tearful scene. There was no confrontation. No reckoning over a dinner table. No movie moment where all the broken pieces came together just right. Forgiveness came in bits. In letting go of the bitterness that used to wake me at 2 a.m. In the way I stopped replaying that night when my father kicked me out. In how I no longer braced myself every time an unfamiliar number lit up my phone. I just moved forward. And that was enough. Emily's table found its rhythm. It wasn't flashy, and I didn't want it to be. Just a little corner cafe with handwritten menus. A pie case that always smelled like cinnamon. And regulars who felt like family. People came not just for the food, but for the feeling. That warm hush when you walk into a place that sees you just as you are. We hung local art on the walls. We hosted quiet Sunday nights where people brought in old family recipes. And we made them together, laughing, remembering. Everyone shared. Everyone belonged. One Sunday, not long before Christmas, Brooke showed up again. Not in designer heels this time, but jeans and a windbreaker. She looked tired, lighter, too. She came in with a small Tupperware container in hand and a nervous smile. I brought Mom's cranberry bread, she said. I nodded. Put it on the table. We worked in silence, side by side, me mixing batter, her chopping walnuts. At one point, our elbows bumped, and we both laughed. Nothing was said, but something passed between us, not resolution. Maybe, but something close enough to hold. Later, as we cleaned up, she asked, "Do you think we were just raised to believe the wrong things mattered?" I looked at her and shrugged. Maybe, but we're grown now. We get to decide what matters next. She nodded. I'm sorry for what I said. And what I didn't say. Back then. I know, I said. And I believe you. That night, after everyone left, I sat in the quiet restaurant and turned off the lights one by one. I stood behind the counter, the same way I had at the diner all those years ago, and listened to the hum of the kitchen. And I realized, I wasn't that girl anymore. The one who got kicked out without a word. The one who paid all the bills in silence and disappeared without thanks. I was a woman now. A builder, a giver, a name on a deed, a name on a sign. A daughter who found her voice by not yelling. A sister who didn't burn the bridge, just walked away from it until she found her own path. Dad came by on New Year's Eve. He didn't stay long, just dropped off a small gift, a box of old photos he found in the garage. Mostly of Mom, some of me as a child in the kitchen. He didn't say much, just, "Thought you should have these," and a quiet, "Happy New Year." I watched him walk back to his car. A little slower than before. But not weighed down anymore. Not angry. Just older. Human. I opened the box when I got home. At the very top was a picture I didn't even know existed, me. At 8, standing on a stool next to Mom, pouring batter into a pie crust. She's laughing. I'm concentrating, tongue sticking out like I'm solving a puzzle. And in the corner of the frame, there's Dad, watching us, smiling. Not proud. Not stern. Just soft. I cried when I saw it. Because in that moment, I realized something that had taken me years to understand. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most were hurting too. And they just didn't know how to love the way we needed. But that doesn't mean we stop loving ourselves. Or stop building. Or stop serving second helpings, not just of food, but of grace. Especially when no one else thought we deserved them.